Hey everyone, welcome back to Stadium Stats. Today we're going to be taking a look at every matchup in the Week 12 of the NFL schedule, followed by my Week 12 power rankings. And before we jump into that, let me just remind you guys that I have been posting my short form content on Instagram, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So if you've already been following me on any of my social media platforms, it would be a huge help if you could go follow me on any of those platforms as well, as I'm now, in addition to posting my podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify, I'm also posting short form on YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So if you could give me a follow on all of my social media accounts, they will all be linked in my description and in my bio on each one of those pages. So if you are looking for direct links to go to those pages, just look in the description below and you'll be able to find those and give me a follow. It would mean a huge help to me, as it would really go a long way in providing a lot of the support that I need to continue to support those platforms. So I'm going to be posting a lot on those platforms, really trying to boost my content, trying to get my content out everywhere I can, and trying to break into the short form variety of content. So if you could give me a follow on all of those platforms, it would really go a long way. With that all out of the way, let's jump right into it. Starting off on Thursday Night Football, we have a matchup in the AFC between the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, they're coming off a divisional win over their rival, the Tennessee Titans, in a game where they looked all right with a backup quarterback. Really not a lot can be said. It was a close game against a bad division rival team in the Titans that they won 16-13. Yes, as I said, Davis Mills, the backup quarterback, was in place of C.J. Stroud, who's been injured with a concussion. And while the Texans have been winning games with Davis Mills, not all of them have been incredibly impressive, and this was one of those less impressive wins, as last week they had a huge comeback against the Jaguars, and then followed it up with kind of a dud kind of game against a bad division rival. They were supposed to win this game, and they did win, but not in an impressive way. And while their offense had some explosivity, Nico Collins looked really good, Davis Mills played pretty well, they really just did not look anything exceptional and really didn't score very much in that first half. The Titans were stopped pretty easily, though, by the Texans' defense, as the Texans' defense continues to impress and continues to be a really, really good unit. The Bills, on the other hand, they're coming off a win over the Buccaneers in a game where they won 44-32 in what was honestly a shootout with a ton of back and forth scoring. The Bills played really impressive on offense. Their defense wasn't as impressive, as they did let up 32 points to the Buccaneers, but their offense played outstanding. Josh Allen had 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing touchdowns, the second time in his career he's ever done that, and the third time in NFL history that's ever been done, as he is the only quarterback to ever do it more than once, as there has only been one occurrence outside of Josh Allen of that happening with 3 passing and 3 rushing or more touchdowns in a game. I do think the Bills are more likely to win this game. Both teams have a very good shot, as both teams have really been rallying lately and have been finding ways to come out of games with victories. I do think this game will come down to whether C.J. Stroud plays or not, on whether the Texans really stand much of a chance, as I do think C.J. Stroud will give a boost to that offense that the offense hasn't had in a few weeks and could go a long way against the Bills, who don't have the best defense, especially in their run defense. However, the Texans don't have a great run game, and so for that reason, because the Bills' biggest downside is their run defense and the Texans' run game isn't that good, I am going to go with the Bills to win. I think they're a better team. I think their offense is more explosive, and I think they'll come away with a victory here. Moving on to Sunday, we've got a matchup between the Colts and the Chiefs. The Colts, they're coming off a bye, much deserved, as they have fallen a little bit behind in the AFC, as the Colts and Broncos and Patriots were all tied going into this week, and the Broncos and Patriots both had a game, and they both won their games. So now the Colts have fallen behind both of those teams by 1 win, but they've had 1 less game. The Chiefs, on the other hand, they're coming off a loss to the Broncos in a game where they lost 19-22 to their division opponent. The Broncos played pretty well against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs just could not stop them very easily. The Chiefs' offense didn't look very good. Patrick Mahomes looked honestly kind of pedestrian and has for a lot of this season, as he's been getting sacked a lot more, turning the ball over a lot more, and just doesn't look as calm under pressure as he normally does and as Mahomes has been known for being. I do think this will be a close game, and I do think this is a very essential game for both teams, as the Colts are fighting for the number one seed in the AFC, and the Chiefs are fighting to be in the playoffs, as right now they are out of the playoff race. I do think the Colts are a better team, and they should win this game. However, I can't count the Chiefs out of any game, and I really wouldn't be surprised if this is a very, very good game, and very close. I am going to still go with the Colts to win, but I wouldn't be surprised with any outcome from this game, as the Chiefs are a very talented team. They still have a ton of experience, and they do know how to win games. They just haven't been winning those close one-score games this year, as they were undefeated in close one-score games last year and have not won a single one of them this year. And that seems to be the biggest difference to this team, so I am going to go with the Colts to win. And what I think will be a close game, as the Colts have been finding ways to win close games, and the Chiefs have been finding ways to lose those close games. Moving on, we have a matchup between the Seahawks and the Titans. The Seahawks, they're coming off a disastrous loss to the Rams 21-19 in a game that honestly ended closer than it should have, in a game where Sam Darnold played horribly. Their offense had 4 interceptions through Sam Darnold. They couldn't get much going on offense, as they really only had 4 field goals in that first half and just could not score a touchdown until right towards the end of that game. They did get more of a chance to win that game than they probably should have, as after being pinned at the 1, they nearly had a drive that would have given them an opportunity on a 60-plus yard field goal that they did end up missing for the loss. That all being said, the Seahawks are still a very good team, and they were playing a division rival and one of the best teams in the NFC in the Rams, so I don't know how much can really be said on if this was a poor Seahawks performance or a really impressive Rams performance. But the fact that the Seahawks were in the game despite 4 interceptions really says a lot about this team's resilience. The Titans, on the other hand, they're coming off a loss to the Texans in a game where, yeah, it's their division rival with a backup quarterback. They're not a very good team. The Titans have been pretty bad all season, and they find another way to lose. However, Cam Ward did look pretty good in this game. Much improvement from him. And Calvin Ridley, unfortunately, did suffer a season-ending injury and will be out for the rest of the year, but he has not been too much of a help to Cam Ward and that offense to begin with. And the Titans are not a very good football team. The Seahawks are a much better team. Their defense has been fantastic all year, and I do think the Seahawks should get this win pretty easily. Moving on, we have a division matchup between the Vikings and the Packers. The Vikings, they're coming off a close loss to the division rival Bears, 19-17, on a walk-off game-winning field goal for the Bears. And J.J. McCarthy really did not look very good in that game, had multiple turnovers. They couldn't do much on offense until right in the fourth quarter, which seemed to be very reminiscent of that first Bears-Vikings game, where the Vikings came away with the victory. But this time the Bears found a way to win instead. The Packers, on the other hand, they're coming off a win in a very tight matchup over the Giants, with the Giants not even having Jackson Dart in that game. Despite that, the Packers only won 27-20 in a one-score game that really came down to the last few moments, as Jameis Winston threw a game-sealing interception to end that game. The Packers have been a significantly better team than the Vikings this year, but the Packers have their flaws too, as they have not been able to come away with dominant victories that they had at the beginning of the year, and really haven't looked like the same team they did through those first few weeks. The Packers are a better team than the Vikings. The Vikings have had many struggles that the Packers haven't this year, but both teams have had their own struggles, as the Packers have been amazing defensively, but have had their downsides on offense in many games this year. The Vikings, on the other hand, their defense has also been pretty dominant, not quite as dominant as the Packers, and their offense hasn't been as explosive as the Packers, but has been a little more consistent, as J.J. McCarthy has a lower floor and a lower ceiling than the Packers. However, they've been more consistent than the Packers, who have been all over the place on offense. I do think the Packers should win this game, as they are a better team than the Vikings, but seeing as this is a division rivalry matchup, I wouldn't be too quick to count either team out, as the NFC North is a tight division race. Neither team is in first of their division, and I do think both teams stand a chance here, as they know each other very well. But I do think that the Packers should come away with a victory, especially considering it's at Lambeau Field, and that home field advantage should be pretty big for a division rival opponent. Moving on, we've got a matchup between the Jets and the Ravens. The Ravens, they're coming off a win over their division rival Browns, 23-16, in a game where their offense couldn't do much of anything. Lamar Jackson looked pretty poor. Derrick Henry and Mark Andrews both had really good games, but the Ravens just couldn't do much on offense. Their defense was pretty stifling, especially once Shedeur Sanders came in for the Browns, and it was all around pretty poor performance by the Browns offensively, and the Ravens defense really stepped up. The Jets, on the other hand, they're coming off a loss on Thursday Night Football to the division rival Patriots in a game where they scored on their first drive and then just didn't do much on offense the rest of the game. Justin Fields yet again throws for under 100 passing yards. He has now been benched for Tyrod Taylor, who's going to be taking over as the starting quarterback, and realistically is hopefully going to make a difference. I don't think it makes a huge difference, but it's hard to get worse than less than 100 passing yards, which is what Justin Fields has been doing pretty much week in and week out. The Jets did lose to the Patriots in a game where their defense didn't look that great, as the Patriots were running all over them, were passing all over them, and the Jets' offense just couldn't do much of anything. The Jets are continuing to prove that they are not a good football team. They're losing games in pretty bad manners, and all around should not stand much of a chance against a good Ravens team that is really needing to win now to try to take over its division and take over the lead to try to win the division. And so the Ravens have a lot of reason to fight in this game, and I think they're going to fight pretty hard and beat the Jets in bringing their win streak to a 5-game win streak, which it sits at 4 right now, but soon should be 5 after a victory over the Jets. Moving on, we have a matchup between the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions. The Lions, they're coming off a loss on Sunday Night Football, 9-16 over the Eagles, in a game where their offense couldn't do much of anything. They were 0 for 5 on fourth down, which was really, really bad. Second time that's happened anytime recently since the year 2000, and both of those times were the Detroit Lions. The Lions' offense really needs to perform a lot better than what they did against the Eagles, as Jahmyr Gibbs was the only bright spot on that offense, and to an extent Jameson Williams, as he had one big touchdown play. But Jared Goff played pretty poor. He had way more incompletions than he normally does, and was just all around really inaccurate, did not look comfortable in that backfield, and just was being put under a lot of pressure. The Giants, on the other hand, they're coming off a loss to the Packers in a game where they started Jameis Winston and really did stand a chance up until the final moments when Jameis threw a game-sealing interception. But they were in that game against the Packers. They showed that they can still be in games. They have the talent on their team to keep them in games, and their coaching staff isn't going to throw games anymore, as they did fire their head coach just last week in Brian Daboll, and hopefully that is enough to turn around this season in enough of a manner that they can at least start closing out games and not choking them away. The Giants aren't going anywhere this season. They're clearly not making the playoffs. They're missing a bunch of players with injury, but it's all about seeing where they can go and if they can secure W's in games, as if they are able to close out games and not throw them away, maybe they'll have their head coach of the future. Maybe they'll be able to build some confidence around Jackson Dart when he gets back in the starting lineup. And while the Giants aren't a good team, and I do think the Lions should very much beat them here, I am excited to see what the Giants are able to do against this Lions defense that was able to hold Philly to 16 points. I do think the Giants have had a more explosive offense than Philadelphia, and I'm excited to see where it can go against the Detroit Lions offense and defense. However, I do think the Lions should still win pretty handedly and come away with a victory over the Giants. Moving on, we have a matchup between the Bears and the Steelers. The Steelers, they're coming off a victory over the division rival Bengals, 34-12, in a game where Aaron Rodgers left with a wrist fracture, and it's in his left wrist, his non-throwing wrist, so there is a chance he still plays despite this. Further testing needs to be done to determine this, and it'll come down to whether Aaron Rodgers is able to play in this game against the Bears on how much of a chance they stand, as their backup quarterback is Mason Rudolph, who, yes, he did play efficient enough and didn't turn the ball over and threw a passing touchdown, but he's nothing special. He's definitely a step down from Rodgers, and Rodgers is already struggling with the lack of weapons he has. The Steelers' defense did really step up, though. They had 2 defensive scores. The Bengals really couldn't do much on offense. They shut down Jamar Chase, and just an all-around really impressive performance by the Steelers. Although Jalen Ramsey did get ejected in that game for throwing a punch at Ja'Marr Chase. So the Bears, on the other hand, though, they're coming off a tight victory over a division rival Vikings, 19-17 on a walk-off game-winning field goal in a game where they were winning almost that entire game. They fell behind right at the end and still found a way to win. This week it was through special teams, as now they have won 7 of their last 8 after starting off the season 0-2, and their special teams came in clutch this week, as they had a really, really important return on their game-winning drive. And so the Bears have been finding ways to win. They're coming away with close victories in matchups they would have lost in years past. But this culture seems different for this team. They're getting guys back from injury. Jalen Johnson's practice window, their best defensive player, finally got opened back up. Kyler Gordon and TJ Edwards should both be returning soon. And those are both all huge boosts to this Bears defense that has had some struggles throughout the season, but looked really strong against the Vikings. They did almost throw that game away as they let up some touchdowns late on in the game and let the Vikings come back, but the Bears were able to secure the win through the help of special teams and offense and continue to prove that they can come away with close victories. I do think that, especially if Aaron Rodgers isn't playing this game, the Bears stand a very good chance to win against the Steelers team, but it really depends on which side of the Steelers' defense ends up showing up, as they've been really inconsistent on defense, have had some really good defensive performances lately, but have also had some really poor performances earlier in the season. And if that defense comes back, especially without Aaron Rodgers, then I really don't think the Steelers stand much of a chance against an explosive Bears offense that has been able to recently step up in the times that it's needed. And so I do have the Bears winning if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play, and I think it'll be very close if Aaron Rodgers does play, but I'm still going to pick the Bears to win even in that scenario, as they're finding ways to close out close games, and I think this will be yet another close game, considering the Steelers are not incredibly explosive on offense, and their defense is going to have a lot to match up against on a very explosive Bears offense. So I'm going to go with the Bears to win, especially considering it's not very clear whether Aaron Rodgers will play in this game or not, but the Bears should win. It may be very close, especially if Rodgers plays, but I'm still going with the Bears to win. Moving on, we have a matchup between the Patriots and the Bengals. The Bengals, they're coming off a loss to the division rival Steelers, 12-34, in a game where they did not look good at all. They were terrible on offense, terrible on defense. Aaron Rodgers left the game with an injury, and they still got destroyed. And just all around, really poor performance by the Bengals. But Joe Burrow practice window has been opened up recently, and he should be returning within the next couple weeks. So maybe that'll be a boost to that offense, as Joe Flacco clearly had his least strong game for the Bengals against the Steelers. So maybe that return of Joe Burrow will bring a boost to that offense that seemingly didn't need a boost until this past week. Ja'Marr Chase really couldn't get much of anything, and now he's seemingly suspended for having spit on Jalen Ramsey in that game, which caused Jalen Ramsey to then punch him, and they both got suspended. So the Bengals may be without Ja'Marr Chase in this game. We'll have to see. The Patriots, on the other hand, they're coming off a win over the division rival Jets, 27-14. They continue their 8-game win streak. Mike Vrabel continues to impress as head coach. Drake May continues to impress as their quarterback, throwing for over 200 yards in almost every game this season. And just all around, really, really impressive year for the Patriots. Their defenses look great. Their offenses look great. Their coaching has looked great. Their special teams has looked great. There's really no weaknesses to this Patriots team. And they are a significantly better team than the Bengals have been, especially on defense, considering the Bengals have yet again let up over 30 points. I do think the Bengals should lose this game, especially if Ja'Marr Chase doesn't play in this one, and especially if Joe Burrow has not returned yet, which I'm assuming he will not have returned for this Patriots game. It would be a really rough matchup for him to return to. So I am going to go with the Patriots to win. I don't think it's a given, because I do think the Bengals have an explosive enough offense, but considering Ja'Marr Chase may not even be able to play in this game due to a suspension, I do think the Patriots should come away with a victory, and I am going to pick the Patriots to beat the Bengals. Moving on, we have a matchup between the Jaguars and the Cardinals. The Jaguars, they're coming off a dominant victory over the Chargers in a game where they won handedly 35-6 against the Chargers, where their pass rush looked great, but the Chargers O-line has been really bad. The Chargers couldn't get much of anything going on offense, and the Jaguars actually played really efficiently on all facets of the ball. They really just had an all-around great game, one of their most impressive performances in years, and just all-around fantastic effort by the Jags. Great coaching effort by Liam Cohen. Their offense looked great. Their defense looked stifling. And they just played a complete football game. The Cardinals, on the other hand, they got dominated by their division rival 49ers, 41-22, in a game where Jacoby Brissett set the all-time completions record in a game with 47 completions on 57 passing attempts. Which, yes, 57 is a lot of passing attempts, but the fact that Jacoby Brissett set the all-time completions record is really impressive in this game. However, his QBR was not very good as I said, there were 57 pass attempts in that game. They also did not play very well on offense, despite how many pass attempts and how many yards they had passing, with over 400 for Jacoby Brissett, because they were so ineffective on a per-down basis. Their yards per attempt was not very high. Their passing yards per attempt was still not very high, despite 47 completions. And it really just goes to show that the statistics and those records that, in this case, Jacoby Brissett hitting that all-time completions record can be misleading because they got dominated in this game despite that completions record. Their offense did have some bright spots, but it came in a bit too late, and their defense just could not stop the 49ers at all, as the 49ers ended up scoring on most of their drives in that game. The Cardinals have definitely struggled on defense throughout the season. Their offense has been a lot better since Jacoby Brissett came in, which was evident against the 49ers, as I don't think they would have even had even close to 400 passing yards with Kyler Murray. But, yet again, the team around him is not good enough. Jacoby Brissett is not efficient enough to win games on his own. And so, therefore, the Cardinals are not a very good team on offense or on defense. And I'm going to pick the Jaguars to come away with a victory in this game, as they have a higher floor and ceiling. Moving on, we have a division rivalry between the Falcons and the Saints. The Falcons, they're coming off a loss to the Panthers in overtime, in a game where they lost 30-27. In a game where Michael Penix left, Drake London left, they both left to injuries. Michael Penix is now on IR and might miss the rest of the season with a knee injury. Drake London is going to miss at least one game, if not more, with a PCL sprain. And Kirk Cousins will be coming in this game, and likely in many future games, if not the rest of the future games for the season for the Falcons, as their season is not quite over, but Michael Penix being hurt likely ends their season in itself. The Saints, on the other hand, they're coming off a bye week. They were previously coming off a win with Tyler Shuck getting his first win for the Saints. It was actually their first time that their own draft pick had won a game for them in their rookie season. And it was just a really good performance by him. They beat the Panthers, which is a division rival. The Panthers have been really decent actually lately and came away with a victory over the Falcons, and yet the Saints beat them by 2 scores for their second win of the season. Neither the Saints or Falcons have been a very consistent or good team this year, and both have had their highs and low moments, as the Saints did beat the Panthers, and at one point in this season, the Falcons ran all over the Buffalo Bills and were able to win that game. But outside of that, both teams have had some really low lows this season, and neither team has been all too effective. I am going to go with what I think will be a very close matchup, but I'm actually going to go with a surprise Saints victory here, as I think Kirk Cousins has really struggled, will continue to struggle without Drake London, and just doesn't have a lot going for him on that offense this week. And so therefore, especially in a division rivalry matchup with a team that's coming off a bye after coming off their second victory of the year over a division rival, I am going to go with the Saints to win. Moving on, we have a matchup between the Buccaneers and the Rams on Sunday Night Football. The Buccaneers, they're coming off a loss to the Bills in a game where they lost 32-44 in a shootout, which had a ton of score lead changes. The Buccaneers and Bills were going back and forth through the early parts of the game, and unfortunately for the Buccaneers, the Bills pulled away late as the Buccaneers punted on 4th and 2 and never saw the ball back, as the Bills made it a 2-score game. The Buccaneers on offense have been fantastic this year. They've had some struggles, as especially missing Bucky Irving for almost the entire year has definitely caused their run game to be in shambles at points. However, Sean Tucker looked amazing in this past week's game, and if they end up getting Bucky Irving back, I have a lot more hope for this offense for the future. The Rams, on the other hand, they're coming off a win over their division rival, the Seahawks, 21-19, in a game where it honestly should not have been as close as it was, considering the Rams forced 4 interceptions on the Seahawks and won the turnover battle as handedly as they did. The Rams are a very good team. Their offense really did have some struggles against that Seattle defense, but the Buccaneers defense has not been as good as the Seattle defense has been throughout the season, so I am sure the Rams offense will be better in this game, and Matthew Stafford continues to impress. Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams, and Devontae Adams all continue to impress as weapons on that offense, and their tight ends have been a really good asset for Matthew Stafford. I do think this will be a very close game, as both of these teams have been really good. The Buccaneers played the Seahawks very close. The Rams played the Seahawks very close. So I am pretty sure this will be a close game in itself. I am going to go with the Buccaneers to win in what I think will be an upset victory over the Rams, as I think the Rams have been a better team. But if Bucky Irving can return in this game, I think the Buccaneers will be able to rally around him. And I do think it's hopeful that Bucky Irving comes back for this game. If Bucky does not play in this game, it will really come down to if that run game can be efficient behind Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. And if it can't, the Rams should actually pretty easily get that win, as the Buccaneers' pass game will not be able to keep up with the Rams' dominant offense and defense. However, if the Buccaneers have their run game back, if they have Bucky Irving, I am going to go with the Buccaneers to win, and so therefore I'm picking the Buccaneers to win on Sunday Night Football over the Rams. Moving on to Monday Night Football, we have a matchup between the Panthers and the 49ers. The 49ers, they're coming off a dominant division rivalry victory, 41-22, in a game where their offense looked unstoppable. They were scoring on almost every single drive. Brock Purdy was in his return. Ricky Pearsall was in his return and didn't even have to do that much. But Brock Purdy brought such a spark to that offense. They finally had their whole offense healthy, with the exception of Brandon Ayuk, who still has not been activated off the PUP list. But outside of Brandon Ayuk, that offense is all back. They're with almost all of their offensive starters. George Kittle's finally back. Christian McCaffrey's been healthy all season. And they have Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and the rest of their receivers finally all back and healthy, including Brock Purdy, the quarterback, which there was a lot of controversy on whether Brock Purdy or Mac Jones should get this start. And Brock Purdy proved that a lot of that controversy should be left to the wayside, as Brock Purdy proved in this game he is the better quarterback, as Mac Jones is an amazing backup, but is yet again just that, a backup, because the 49ers had their highest point total in this game on the entire season. They had their most effective game, efficient game. Brock Purdy played really well, over 200 yards and 3 passing touchdowns, and just played all around really efficient. The Panthers, on the other hand, they're coming off a win over the division rival Falcons in overtime, in a game where Bryce Young threw for a franchise record 400-plus passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Just an all-around outstanding performance by Bryce Young. Tetairoa McMillan looked great in the receiving game. Even Xavier Legette really looked great in that receiving game. And the run game behind Rico Dowdle looked plenty good. They were able to come away with a victory, and yes, the Falcons were without Michael Penix by the end of the game. Yes, they were without Drake London by the end of the game. And yes, it did still take overtime. But the Panthers came back from a deficit and were able to come away with a victory on a dominant performance from Bryce Young. And that might be one of the first times you can possibly say Bryce Young was the reason they won. And that gives Panthers fans a lot of hope, as if they can build around that Bryce Young performance, and if Bryce Young can continue playing as effectively as he did in that game, or anywhere near it, the Panthers should have some success. I do think the 49ers are a better team. I do think this will be an offensive matchup, as the 49ers really struggled on defense in general this season, as they're full of defensive injuries. They're also unfortunately going to possibly be without their kicker, Eddie Pinheiro, who's been really good for them all year, but he suffered a hamstring injury in that win, and it's yet to be seen if he will play. If he does, I do think the 49ers should win, as their special teams has been really good all year, and in combination with a dominant offense, I do think that would be enough to beat a Panthers team that typically has not been able to put up as many points on offense. But I'm not going to rule the Panthers out of this matchup, as the 49ers' run defense has not been very good, and the Panthers' run game behind Rico Dowdle has been fantastic this year. In addition, if Bryce Young plays anywhere near what he did last week, the Panthers will be very hard for the 49ers defense to shut down and bottle up, because the Panthers have a really all-around good offense right now. Their run game behind Rico Dowdle, their pass game behind Bryce Young, both look really good. And so if they can play effectively, if they can play an all-around game on offense, their defense has really been stepping up. It just will have to be seen if the 49ers offense will be too much for that Panthers defense to overcome, as the 49ers offense looked really efficient when they were all healthy. I am going to go with the 49ers to win, as yet again, the whole offense should be healthy, and that should be enough for the 49ers to take a lead and hold on to a lead. But the Panthers showed they can come back from a deficit. They showed that they can win through the passing game, not just the running game. And if they have another dominant performance on offense, it might be too much for the 49ers defense to handle. But I am still going with the 49ers to win. Moving on, we've got a matchup between the Browns and the Raiders. The Browns, they're coming off a loss to the division rival Ravens in a game where Shedeur Sanders came in and looked horrible. I know everybody'd been calling for Shedeur Sanders to get some game time and Dillon Gabriel to be benched. Well, Dillon Gabriel ended up getting a concussion in this game, and Shedeur Sanders came in and looked atrocious. He had a terrible passer rating at around 17, which it's out of 158. That's a really bad passer rating. But to be fair, Kevin Stefanski, the coach, had not been giving him any first-team reps since he had been drafted. And that really set him up for failure in that game. However, he did look really bad and does not give a lot of hope for this Browns team in the future if he is still the quarterback. But that being said, nor did Dillon Gabriel. So I don't really think it's all too different. I think the Browns' defense continued to play really well, and they really were able to shut down that Ravens offense quite well, as Lamar Jackson had one of his worst games in recent memory and just could not get much going in through the air at all. The run game did look pretty decent, though, against the Browns, as Derrick Henry looked pretty good, but the Browns were not quite as successful at stopping Derrick Henry as they were the first time when they really put their foot down and said, we're going to stop Derrick Henry, but they stopped Lamar Jackson much more effectively this time. The Raiders, on the other hand, they're coming off a loss on Monday Night Football, 16-33 to the Cowboys, in a game where they just couldn't get much of anything going. Their offense looked bad. Their defense looked bad. They couldn't finish out drives on offense. Their offense actually didn't look horrible, but it did not look good. Brock Bowers and Geno Smith played all right enough. They couldn't get a running game going, though, because they were not running the ball in the first half and just were not running it successfully in the second half. And then when they fell behind, they couldn't run the ball. In addition to that, their defense played atrocious, as the Cowboys were able to do whatever they wanted against the Raiders. I am going to pick the Browns to win in a close matchup between the Raiders and Browns, as I do think both of these teams have been pretty bad this season. Both of these teams have not a lot going for them, but the Browns have more going for them. A, their defense is really good, and B, if they can get a run game going with Quinshon Judkins to help supplement whoever is playing at quarterback, I think that will go a long way in giving them a boost to that offense, and who knows, maybe even Shedeur Sanders can pick up the pace after getting some first-team reps this week in practice. So I'm going to go with the Browns to win. Moving on, we have a matchup between the Eagles and the Cowboys. The Eagles, they're coming off a win on Sunday Night Football over the Lions, 16-9, in a game where their defense continues to astound everybody. It's one of the best units in the entire league. Shut down the Packers and held them to 7 points the week prior. Then holds the Lions to just 9 points. Just really, really impressive performance by the Eagles defense over the past few weeks. And that's against some really good offenses. The Eagles' offense, on the other hand, though, has not been very good, as they have not been able to do much of anything against their opponents recently. Saquon looked all right. Their pass game looked all right. It definitely was an improvement from the game against the Packers, but it still wasn't much, seeing as they only scored 16 points, and Devontae Smith really got shut down in that game. Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown really did step up a little bit, though, especially Dallas Goedert, who's been really good this year. He seemingly leads the team in receiving touchdowns and has been a really good weapon for Jalen Hurts. But outside of him, the weapons have really been struggling this year. Jalen Hurts has really been struggling this year, and that whole offense has not been able to do very much. The Cowboys, on the other hand, they're coming off a win on Monday Night Football, 33-16 over the Raiders, in a game where their offense could seemingly do anything they wanted. Their defense was actually pretty decent at shutting down the Raiders. Their defense had a huge boost from getting DeMarvion Overshown back from injury, who is an outstanding linebacker when he's on the field. And they also got Quinnen Williams to play in his first game since they traded for him, coming off of back-to-back bye weeks, seeing as he was on the Jets for their bye week, and then he was traded to the Cowboys for their bye week. So, coming off 2 bye weeks, he had 1 sack on the season and had 1.5 in that game alone for the Cowboys, in his Cowboys debut. So that was a huge boost to that offense, or to that defense, and they continue to show that defense is getting better. It's not a great unit, but having these new players on the field, and not to even mention their new linebacker Logan Wilson, who they traded for from the Cincinnati Bengals, have been boosts to that defense. That all being said, I think the Eagles' defense will be a lot for this Cowboys offense to handle. And while the Cowboys' offense has been incredibly explosive, the Eagles' defense has also been incredibly explosive. Now, I'm very curious to see how this game plays out, as the first game between the Eagles and Cowboys back in Week 1 was a very explosive offensive performance for both teams up until the storm delay, and then neither team really did much of anything. And so I am very curious whether the Eagles' defense can shut down the Cowboys' offense, or whether the Cowboys' offense will be too much for the Eagles' defense to handle. I do think the Eagles are a better team and are a more well-rounded team, but I think the Cowboys have a huge boost and can go into this trying to fight their tails off and really make an effort in this game to win. I do think this will be a lot closer than most people probably think, considering their records. So I do think it's definitely a boost to the Cowboys that it's a divisional matchup and that they had those defensive pieces added to their team. But I am still going to go with the Eagles to win. They are one of the better teams in the league. They're shutting down really high-end offenses throughout the past few weeks, and it's just been really impressive from that Eagles defense. So I am going to go with the Eagles to win. What I think will be a close divisional matchup, but again, I am going to go with the Eagles. And I'm actually going to be trying something out new this week. And I'm going to be splitting off my power rankings from my prediction videos. I'm going to be making them 2 separate uploads on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. So please let me know what you guys think of this new format, as the predictions are going to be up first each week, and then followed by a separate upload of my power rankings. Shortly after you are seeing this prediction video, you should be seeing the power rankings uploaded very shortly after. So if you guys appreciate this new style that I'm doing, please let me know what you guys think. Please let me know if you hate it, love it, what your thoughts are. And don't forget to go follow me on all of my new social media platforms where I'm uploading all my short form content. That will be up on TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, Twitter/X, and LinkedIn, as well as my full podcasts now being split into 2 different uploads on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. So please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on all of my socials. And please let me know what you think of this new format, as I really appreciate all the support. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.